Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watch One, and thanks for logging on. Today we're looking at an IWC GST Perpetual Calendar Chronograph. This is the reference 3756-07. This is 43 millimeters, polished and brushed stainless steel with the rare and highly sought rhodium dial. Now this watch from 2001 to 2004 was the flagship of IWC's GST sports watch range. And in a lot of ways, it remains an absolutely unique piece. A chronograph with a rhodium dial, a moon phase, and an exquisite one at that. 400-foot, 120-meter water resistance. Of course, you've got the perpetual calendar, and it's a comprehensive one, with the day, the date, the month, as well as the year, the decade, and the century, and a 122-year programmed moon phase with the most explosive star-spangled disc I can ever recall seeing. So let's put this model on the wrist and get a sense of its fit and its finish and its features. Now my wrist is 6 1/3 inches, 16 centimeters in circumference, so those of you who are familiar with these videos, by now you get a pretty good sense of how the watch fits on a slightly below average human wrist. What I will say is that although this watch is 43 millimeters across, the lugs are among the very shortest I've seen, and I'm trying to show you how the flare of the bezel and the extremity of the lugs on this watch are almost nearly the same. There's hardly any projection beyond the circumference of the case, so while it is a big watch, it doesn't wear much bigger than its nominal 43. It's not one of those watches that has another half mile of lug to add to the size of the watch once it's on the skin. It's in no danger of hula hooping. It's in no danger of overhanging the periphery of my wrist. The only drawback in terms of fit might be that at 16 millimeters thick, it is exceptionally fat, and it's a thick 16, because I want to emphasize, and this angle really gives you a good view of it, that the bezel has a little bit of an overhang to it. It actually cantilevers out and over the flanks of the case, so if you're trying to get a sleeve to ride up and over this one, you might have to fight with it or get it started a little bit, or at the very least wear a relatively loose sweater or coat. Just keep in mind that in terms of sleeve compatibility, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, I'd say this one's probably about a 4. But the watch has a startlingly good look that's versatile, with plenty of silver tones brushed and polished on the integrated bracelet, blending into a case that likewise incorporates brushed accents on its lug tops and its case flanks to complement polish, lug flanks, and a fully polished bezel. This is a very stylish timepiece, and it leads straight into the rhodium dial. I want to emphasize that this is not silver. It is rhodium-plated, just like a brass movement that's rhodium-plated comes out of the watchmakers of Geneva with that distinctive silver-gray look. That's what you're getting here with the rhodium-plated dial. You're also getting an exceptional amount of detail and depth, because this is one of the most extensively stepped and differentiated dials I have ever seen. You step inboard from the bezel. I want to emphasize there's a huge ratio of dial to bezel here. The bezel, when viewed from overhead, and here's a good angle, the bezel's barely there. What you're reading is the dial, so although this is a 43, it reads as a 45, a 46, or even a 47, just because the dial is so huge and broad. And IWC makes the best use of all that real estate. I want to focus moving in from the bezel. You have a first stepped track at the minute track. You can see the minute hashes run all the way around, and then inboard, not only are there the hashes with the intermediate ticks representing the eighths of a second, but you actually see inboard there are the regular minute hashes in between the diamond polished facets of the hour markers. Now I want to make a note on loom. The loomed elements of this watch are confined entirely to the strips on the hand. So while there is a lot of articulation about the periphery of the dial with several steps, beautiful diamond polished applied faceted hour markers, the sole luminescent elements are the hands. Still, they're big enough and bold enough that at night, when you see the watch glow, you'll have no trouble telling what time it is. Now, continuing to move inboard on this rhodium dial, you encounter the semi-sunken sub-registers of the perpetual calendar system. Now, there is a constant seconds hand in addition to the day of the week here at 9 o'clock, so you've got that feature as well. There's no distinct guilloche pattern to these registers. They're just cut into the dial and sunken in slightly, as is the year, the decade, and the century indication here at 8:30, and then, pardon me, 7:30 right here, and then the moon phase at 12 o'clock is exceptional for a couple of reasons. I'm going to try to get the light to strike it to get the most out of it. I'm not sure that I could pull it off on the iPhone, but this moon phase has a star-spangled luster to it that I have never seen on any other moon phase disc from any other manufacturer. It almost looks like it's covered in glitter. It's expressive, it's explosive, and it's a real treat to behold. And the way it contrasts with that matte rhodium dial, and of course the gold of the moon itself, is both beautiful and unique. This is like nothing else. Now I want to focus on the fact that the dial is beautifully finished, and for such a large dial, it manages to avoid being stark, and for such a complicated dial, it manages to avoid being busy. All the indications are obvious, the subregisters are large enough to clearly express, even when they're bearing more than one piece of information, like seconds and day, or chronograph hours and month, they're easy to read and interpret. And that level of attention to detail is carried over into the bracelet itself, as well as the clasp. Now, one of the key innovations of the GST line was that it introduced the fully modular sports watch bracelet to IWC. Now, this tradition has continued today in the current production, but every single one of these little buttons on the center link on the interior, let me try to get a good view of them in the light, every single one of these little buttons is a quick release for that individual link. So when sizing this watch, you can get a very, very precise fit without any unique jeweler's tool. You can easily depress the button, remove the spring bar, and size the watch precisely to fit any wrist. The fit is as good as the finish, and the finish is stunning. You can see that the shoulders, the actual outboard shoulders of the links, feature high polish. The tops of the links feature a brushed pattern, and the center links, again, high polished. The contrasting finish, evident on the clasp itself, its interior is engine turned and brushed, and its flanks are polished. It's a very high quality piece, and it closes with a satisfying snick. It has a trigger release for security. I like everything about this bracelet and clasp setup, and it emphasizes that IWC doesn't just build great complications for the money. They give you a lot for your money, period, in terms of art design, in terms of engineering, and in terms of the quality of the assembly and the finish. They are a fine Swiss watchmaking house in every respect. They've got that Schaffhausen tool watch ethic, which is why, even though this watch has a bit of a formal look to it with the rhodium dial and the silver accents, as well as a high standard of finish, it's still water resistant, as I mentioned earlier, to 12 ATM, 120 meters, or 400 feet. So you're talking about a very versatile timepiece. As long as you don't need it to tuck under a very tight dress cuff, this is a watch that can do it all. Screw down crown, exceptionally rugged, and that extends to the movement inside, which is IWC's caliber 79261, based on the time-tested and bomb-proof Valjoux 7750 automatic chronograph. This one has quite a few toys. First and foremost, automatic winding. It's a set-it-and-forget-it perpetual calendar that's as easy to calibrate to the day, the date, the month, and the moon phase as any date-only Rolex with a quick set. You simply cycle through the fully coordinated calendar. That is, the day, the date, the month, and the moon phase can never be out of sync. So you just adjust the date to whatever the current day is for that month, and all the other indications move into place. They can never become uncoordinated. A single point of adjustment. The entire module was developed by IWC watchmaker, master watchmaker, I should say, Kurt Klaus, who served the company for parts of 7 decades. To this day, it remains the most user-friendly perpetual calendar in the business, and also one of the toughest. A true sports watch. The rest of the movement is pure Valjoux 7750, 43 joules, 28,800 vibrations per hour. Like I said, when you pull the crown, it hacks, so it stops the balance and allows you to synchronize it precisely to a reference time. Rugged, beautiful, versatile, and unusual, this IWC GST Perpetual Calendar Chronograph, 43 millimeters in stainless steel, can be seen on our website, Watch You Want.